Good afternoon. I'm Steve Wiggins. I'm a research fellow at the Overseas Development Institute. I'm an agricultural economist, and I am the chief author, together with Sharada Keats, of the topic guide which is called Leveraging the Private Sector to Promote Agriculture and Natural Resource-Based Livelihoods. And basically what this topic guide is about is it's the big question of how do we get to stimulate formal private enterprise, its investment and its know-how to work with small-scale and informal farmers, fishers and herders to their benefit and to everyone's benefit. That's what the topic guide is about. And the framework that we've taken to answer this has basically three components. It says that if we want successful agricultural and rural development, we need to have three things in there. Now, the first of those things is an enabling rural investment climate, which allows everybody to get on with their business, peace and security, macroeconomic stability, and so on, with the big message under that, it doesn't have to be perfect. You only have to get over the really big obstacles for investment to start taking place. The second element in there is rural public goods, the provision of roads, investing in people through education and health, investing in research and extension. Those things that the private sector won't do, those are essential government roles. And those two particular roles, the investment climate and rural public goods, these are absolutely basic. They have to be in there. Things have to happen under those. Otherwise, private sector people can't get to work. The good news is most of that is technically relatively straightforward. Given political will, given funding, that can happen. But the third element is much trickier, and that is overcoming the quite chronic rural market failures that make it difficult for both small-scale informal people and large-scale private business to invest in agriculture. And those sorts of rural market failures are the high costs of information, of bankers, for example, learning about the character and competence of small-scale farmers. It's about high learning costs for setting up new institutional arrangements. It's about high investment costs which are only paid off in the long term. And all of those market failures means that when there are things that are underlying business opportunities, they're not seized upon, technologies are not used, investments are not made, simply because the information, the risks and so on are too high. Now that's what we spend most of our time in the topic guide discussing. And we look here at a range of initiatives that have tried to overcome those market failures without the state necessarily going back in there. And there's a huge range of initiatives, really a very exciting range of initiatives, some initiated by private firms, such as all kinds of contracting arrangements, some done by NGOs who work with private sector and government to broker those sorts of arrangements, some by foundations and NGOs such as the 1 Acre Fund, which has set up a scheme to distribute directly to 130,000 farmers in Kenya and Rwanda maize and bean seed, fertilizer with marketing services and microinsurance backing it up, which has been running successfully now for several years. There are all kinds of exciting things that are going on there, and if I attempted to give them to you now in the podcast, I'd still be speaking in another 20 minutes. So let me just say, what are the big messages that we have at the end of our topic guide? And we say, well, look, when it comes to promoting growth by private enterprise, those basic conditions of the rural investment climate and the rural public goods, those are absolutely critical. Second point we make in there is there has to be a business case. You have to get the underlying economics correct. Otherwise, nobody's going anywhere on these things. That seems obvious, but it's sometimes overlooked. Market failures, however, that I've talked about are the big frontier, the big challenge, but they offer great rewards if we can overcome them. And learning processes are the ways to get there. And to make learning processes work, we need champions, people who are determined to see their way through obstacles to make things work. And we need stakeholder forums that can bring people together to craft ways around obstacles. A second set of messages are about how inclusive is this? Well, the blunt message from our report is do not expect all small farmers, all marginal farmers to engage with formal private firms. It's going to be a relatively small part of the cake. An awful lot of small-scale and marginal farmers live in a world of informality, serving domestic market chains and so on, and some of the more eye-catching schemes for linking to big private business are simply not applicable to the vast majority of people, and that takes us back to the message. What do marginal farmers really need? They need those basics in place, and they need the market failures solving. We've had a look at, our final set of messages are about learning lessons and about scaling up and scaling out. And, we've got two comments that we'd make in there is the DFID initiatives that we've been looking at, the various challenge funds, financial deepening trust, catalysts, growth corridors, trademarks and so on. It's all rather exciting stuff. It's very promising. We haven't evaluated it yet. It's going to be extremely interesting to see how these are going. But, in principle, they're working on the right problems. And they should, some of them are going to produce really useful lessons. Maybe not all of them, but some of them most certainly will. And our final comment, replication and scaling up. We are seeing some pilot schemes now working at scale, such as the 1 Acre Fund. 130,000 farmers is no longer a pilot. It's been running for several years. And we need to learn the lessons of that. And we need to compare the costs of running that kind of operation to things such as the Malawi Farm Input Supply Scheme, the fertilizer subsidy program, and to compare those sorts of costs against social protection and so on as a way to get low-income farmers started. Thank you.